Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. More specifically, a brand new Albums I Missed video. And because we did not review a lot of new music in November 2023, instead we decided to do stuff like Uncle Meldy's Kitchen, and a video about Death Heaven, and another video about separating the art from the artist. Because we did not pay attention to new music, there are, therefore, a lot of albums that we missed in the last couple of weeks or so. With this in mind, and also because we want to get to that sweet, juicy end-of-the-year content as soon as possible, let's not waste any time. Let's just jump right into things with this brand new EP from Sodom entitled 1982. This is kind of like a compilation album in a way, bringing together a slew of tracks from the very, 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 very early days of Sodom, specifically applying a new greasy coat of black and thrash underground speed metal paint as well. You've got witching metal, victims of death, Let's Fight in the Darkness of Hell, and Equinox specifically, all sounding fresh and mean and gnarly and spicy and fucked in the head. You've also got a brand new song called 1982, which from what I understand was kind of written to commemorate these early years of Sodom's history and also the early years of debauchery and insanity and darkness in the extreme metal underground. Overall, it's a great little EP. I love how much more punch and clarity there is in these older tunes with this new coat of paint. It still has the spirit of those older cuts, but it kind of feels like something that maybe a newer kind of like blackened thrash, blackened heavy metal band might put together for like a demo or an EP of their own. It's fair to say if you don't give a shit about Sodom, this EP would not do anything to change your mind, but for the Sodom maniac in the family, I think this will make a great stocking stuffer, which is something to genuinely consider now that we are approaching the dreadful Christmas holiday time of the year. Side note, it's really cool to see that at this point, Sodom is just releasing something every single year. Like, they haven't dropped a full-blown studio album since 2020, but they dropped an EP in 2021. Last year, they had that other compilation album, which was kind of like a greatest hits album, but they also re-recorded a bunch of older tunes, like at least one song from each album, and now they have another brand new EP. That's cool. Great to see these guys are hard at work and staying busy and making cool tunes. Next up, we have The Shadow Inside from Sadus. This is their first full-blown studio album in nearly 17 years, and their first one without Steve DiGiorgio on bass guitar. I'm not gonna lie, that little factoid in and of itself is a bit of a bummer, but I think that Sadus kind of prove on this album that they can hold their own and they still got plenty to offer. This thing is mean, fast, straight to the point. Lots of fast, muscular, hard-hitting riffs and rhythms, lots of meaty grooves, lots of blistering percussion. It's a very straightforward and one-dimensional record. It's definitely not going to win awards for revolutionizing and reimagining how we write and perceive and perform thrash metal. But if you're looking for some old-school underground thrash pyrotechnics, it's hard to imagine you could somehow go wrong with this. Next up, we have another EP, this time from Insomnium, entitled Songs from the Dust. Kind of a busy year for Insomnium, I suppose. They did drop a new album back in February, Anno 1696. I don't really know if this EP is connected to that album in any way, if it has some leftover material from that album, some unused cuts or whatever. What I can tell you is that this new EP pretty much offers everything I expect and want from Insomnium, but in a more bite-sized package. Lots of cold, gloomy, melancholic vibes and atmospheres contrasted with really well-produced and written melodic death metal. The opening cut, Flowers of the Night, shows Insomnium flexing some love for, like, doom metal and gothic metal in the vein of, like, classic Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride, which I think is really cool. The title track, Song from the Dusk, meanwhile, is a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more bombastic, throwing in some almost prog metal-style keyboards and synthesizers and some more epic arrangements. And then there's Stained in Red, which is just classic Finnish melodic death metal, done really well, cooked perfectly, seasoned perfectly. Definitely check this out if you're a fan of Insomnium, folks. This is a really good EP. Next up, we have Super Bloom from Silent Planet, and I've gotten a lot of requests to review this one. I've read a lot of comments, a lot of messages, a lot of emails from people all saying, hey man, you need to review this album. Why haven't you reviewed this album? When are you going to review this album? This is one of the best albums of the year. You need to talk about this album. And congratulations to all of the people who love this album. Please continue to do so, but respectfully, I was supremely bored by this, and I kind of thought it was a waste of time. I appreciate some of the more intelligent and thought-provoking lyricism, and I would say from a production standpoint, this thing does a good job at balancing all of these electronic elements and all of these progressive elements and all of these, like, metalcore gent elements into something that is, like, palatable and cohesive and accessible, but damn, the music just did nothing for me. This sounds like every other, like, prog metal gentcore album released within the last 10 years or so. Not a single original idea, not a single, like, new concept. It just reeks of stuff that I've already heard before and haven't previously enjoyed, you know? Like, I'd much rather just go listen to that fucking Periphery record again from earlier this year, or Invent Animate, because there was just much more going on there musically. They were more engaging, they were more satisfying, they were more consistent. This just fell really flat for me. Next up, another EP, because I guess everyone's trying to crap out an EP right before the holidays. We have Spiritbox with The Fear of Fear, featuring the Grammy Award-nominated cut Jaded. First off, good for Spiritbox. It's cool to see, like, a young new metal band being nominated for a Grammy. It's cool to see somebody who's actually, like, trendy and popular within modern metal being recognized by the Grammys. It's a shame that you'll probably lose because you're going up against, like, fucking Metallica and Slipknot, but hey, baby steps. Congratulations. As far as the EP itself is concerned, it's fine. It's pretty much everything I've come to expect from Spiritbox at this point. Not gonna lie, it also would have been cool if we got that Megan Thee Stallion Cobra remix on this EP as well. I understand that for a multitude of reasons that would have been difficult. That's probably up to Megan and not Spiritbox, but even so. Overall, a solid EP, but I'm starting to get hungry for something a little bit more inspired and a little bit more fresh from Spiritbox. Hopefully, a new album in the future will give me exactly that. Next up, we have Bat's brand new studio album from Irish thrash metal crew Gama. They've been a pretty thoroughly consistent and reliable source for goofy, over-the-top, well-performed and presented thrash metal. Their 2012 LP, The Terror Tapes in particular, I honestly think is kind of a hidden gem for, like, modern thrash metal. Bats is by no means a groundbreaking record, but I think Gama are able to keep things fresh and exciting and engaging with their sense of humor and by throwing in these little itty-bitty twists and turns here and there. Like, there's a lot that they kind of do within the confines of their sound, within the confines of what is expected and what is wanted from Gama to make this really interesting. You've got Egyptron, for instance, which has some guitar licks fusing, like, psychedelic music and surf rock and, like, Middle Eastern Egyptian music into something, like, really fluid and really cool and really trippy. There's some spoken word vocals, some progressions that wouldn't be out of place on, like, maybe something from Iron Maiden in the mid-'80s. Then there's Living Dead in Beverly Hills, which embraces some more high-octane speed metal and even interpolates, like, some classical music into some pretty fun, like, twin guitar leads. And then there's something like Don't Get Your Hair Cut, which is blunt and crude and simple and kind of embraces some old-school, like, punk and hardcore and crossover vibes. Just a really fun record from start to finish. We almost reviewed it on the Metal Meltdown here. Had we done so, we'd be looking at like a solid 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we have Epilogue's brand new EP from French black metal, post-metal crew Celeste. We reviewed their previous studio album, Assassins, here on the Metal Meltdown in February of last year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I liked how bitter and stark and anxious it was. I love those heart-wrenching shrieks and gutturals. I mean, you could just feel the pain in that man's chest. This EP very much offers more of the same. It is, I would say, a tighter, meaner, more muscular record. It even packs some gnarly grooves that maybe wouldn't be out of place on an early Gojira number. But overall, this is very much in line with what I've come to expect from Celeste. The closing number specifically with Idle Hands, I think, is one of the best things I think I've ever heard from Celeste. I love how spacious it is. I love how cold it is. I love how it lingers on these droning chords and these muted horns for a while, some soft-spoken, like really moody, clean vocals, some whispered vocals, before then kind of like blossoming into like a massive post-metal, shoegaze metal kind of number. I love the clashing repetitive cymbals, which almost makes it sound like rain descending from the sky. I love those huge drawling guitars. I love those really moody, ethereal vocals. Just an absolutely fantastic number. Everything else on the EP is really solid too, like really tight, really brutal, like black post-metal with some more amazing heart-wrenching vocals. This could honestly be a contender for Best Metal EP of the Year. It really is just fantastic from start to finish, folks. Next up, we have Cursed Mortality, brand new studio album from Belgian death metal crew Carnation, who I would argue are tipping their toes into blackened death metal with this particular EP. It's just so grim and gnarly and sinister and dark and mean. It even opens with like some atmospheric effects and some more epic, like spooky elements that wouldn't be out of place on like a symphonic black metal record, or maybe something like heavily influenced by that sound, like something more recent from like Carnifex or Lorna Shore. Regardless of whatever little sub-genre box you want to cram it into, undeniably some gnarly jams and tunes here. Love that super mean, crunchy, gritty guitar tone. Love those vocals. Good variety of riffs and rhythms and beats. I like seeing some more melodic and melancholic elements pop up across the album, especially on the more progressive closing number and title track, Cursed Mortality. Overall, a really solid record. This is another one that I kind of considered reviewing. I came damn near close to reviewing. Had I done so, I'm thinking maybe either a very enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5, or maybe even like a 4 out of 5, but like a little lower, like leaning towards a 3.5 out of 5, if that makes sense. It's a really good album. Check it out. Next up, we have Symptoms of Survival, brand new studio album from up-and-coming American metalcore crew Dying Wish. And I gotta say, I think it's pretty cool. I like how just totally unhinged and deranged it is. Like, there's all these venomous vocal assaults. The lyrics are uncompromising and vicious. The music is rabid. There's a lot of, like, jagged grooves and rhythms and breakdowns. It kind of has, like, the aura of, like, nu metal in, like, the late 90s. But musically, I'd say this has, like, more of an underground hardcore punk meets early 2000s metalcore kind of thing going on. This whole thing ends up sounding like something I might have heard on, like, the Mayhem Festival tour back in the day. But I mean that in a good way, you know? Like, this has a good energy to it. It's got a lot of momentum. It's got a lot of darkness. It's definitely edgy, but not to the point of being, like, really fucking corny. Not to the point of making me cringe. Yeah, overall, I weirdly find myself liking this album. This makes me nostalgic for a time of music that I didn't even really care for. But yeah, I kind of dig it. Fuck it. Next up, we have This Heathen Land from Green Lung. This is their first album of Nuclear Blast Records, and it's also their most ambitious record to date. They're now pulling influence from more epic, adventurous doom metal and classic heavy metal. They're pulling influence from occult rock and psychedelic rock. The Black Sabbath influence definitely still remains, but now there's also influence from, like, The Sword and Ghost. And for the most part, I think that this works really well across the entire album. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed other stuff from Green Lung, but now it feels like they have their own identity. Now it feels like they have their own sound and their own style, and they're not just copying the greats. Love the sound of this record. I love the guitar tone. Love all the keyboards and all the psychedelic and progressive effects. Love how confident everyone is on this album, especially vocally. I mean, these are some great fucking vocals here. Overall, a really solid record, and maybe one of the more inventive kind of doom stoner metal records out there right now. Next up, we have Black Mirror, brand new studio album from apparently long-running Italian blackened death metal crew Mortuary Drape. I've honestly never really heard of them until this fucking moment, but if their previous material is anything like this album, I promise you, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna check out more of their stuff, because this thing's pretty cool. I really love the feel and the atmosphere and the vibe of this thing. The specific mixture of, like, black and death metal with those really old school, like, death and almost thrash metal rhythms, and, like, the black metal vocal theatrics and, like, the shadowy textures and keyboards. Like, that's really cool. There's a pretty decent amount of variety to the record that keeps things fresh as well. You have these doomier moments, you have these more brutal and hellish moments. The music is really punchy and mean with an especially grisly bass tone, which I love. That is great to see. I would maybe argue that the album could be a little shorter. It's got 11 tracks clocking in at 50 minutes when it could make do with 9 clocking in at 40 minutes. But like everything on this album is super solid. Love the vibe. Again, their specific fusion of black and death metal I think is really, really cool. Again, if their other stuff is anything like this, I think I'll be spending a little bit more time with Mortuary Drape. Definitely check this bad boy out. Next up, we have Embalmed in Decay, brand new studio album from Carnal Tomb, playing some very sinister, underground, old-school death metal. Kind of feels like a mix of like early Tomb Mold and Undeath. Like, it's gross and slimy, and it has some dark, complicated rhythms and passages, but it's also just like a pummeling death metal beast. It doesn't waste time, it doesn't fuck around, it gets straight to the goddamn point. The guitar work consistently across this thing is fantastic. I love a lot of those like really sinister, hellish guitar leads. I love some of the weirder textures in the back. I like the bass playing too. It has a nice slimy, earthy presence. It's just fucking like gross and twisted and dark and fun. It's everything you want from like a really fucked up kind of underground death metal record. Definitely check this out as well. And finally, let's start wrapping things up with Exog Galactic, brand new studio album from Zoff, X-Off. I'm not sure how their name is pronounced. Here's what I do know. This thing is, it's pretty over the top, and it's a little silly at times. The thing is, for me, this thing is just so flashy, and there's so many layers and so many dynamics that it begins to feel like really show-offy in the way that like the worst of modern tech death very often does, like artisan era kind of shit, you know? But the thing is, unlike your standard artisan era band, there is actually some nuance and depth to this. Like, they're bringing in influence from like sci-fi, progressive thrash metal bands like Vector. There are some darker, almost blackened shades and spices to this as well. I think the issue here ultimately is that there is just simply too much. Too many influences, too many styles, too many layers, too many dynamics. And the actually like well-crafted and well-produced music that is there kind of ends up getting lost in the mix of it all, you know? You know, it's like you have a really good fucking hamburger and like chipotle mayo and some cheese, bacon, lettuce, boom, but then all of a sudden you want to throw on some caramelized onions, some roasted red peppers, like a little jalapeno pop or whatever the fuck. You want to throw on another fucking patty. You want to throw on something else. You want to stuff the patty now, and you want to serve it on a funky bun, and you can't just have french fries. Now you want to serve like fucking waffle fries, or you want to make poutine or some shit, or something fried in duck fat, you know? Throw on some fucking foie gras and white truffle oil. It's like you don't need all this stuff. Like, it's fine. Like, we can just have a well-crafted hamburger. We can just have a tasty tech death hamburger. It's okay, Zoff. It's okay. Less is sometimes more. You're okay. I think overall people are gonna like this, though. I mean, it's got enough, like, really flashy, over-the-top guitar work to keep any modern tech death nerd happy for a while. Not my cup of tea, it's just a little bit too much, but overall it's hard not to appreciate a lot of what is going on here. Like, there is well-written music here, it's just kind of lost in just how many dynamics and in how many influences and sounds and ideas there are. And voila! Albums I missed, November 2023. We've got a couple more album reviews on the way, and then after that, we're pretty much right in the midst of end of the year, album of the year content time. With that in mind, it would be smart if you subscribed to the Metal Meltdown, just in case you haven't done so already. Look, there's even more videos here. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.